Thank you, Amit, and welcome everybody, friends of Affinity. And in particular, it is my task this afternoon to do our welcome to country. And I acknowledge that our forebears, many of our forebears, took the land away from the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and that they are still fighting to get it back. Good afternoon, then. Another in our wonderful series of Affinity lectures. I'm Alison Broinowski, and I used to be an Australian diplomat, and I'm a bit of a writer nowadays. And I love coming to Affinity events because I always go away with something that I didn't come with in the first place. So for those of you for whom this is the first Affinity event, perhaps, let me introduce you to it. Affinity was formed some 20 years ago now by a group of young Muslim Australians whose aim was to promote multiculturalism, and this was before 2001, you notice, and to foster intercultural and interfaith dialogue, building bridges between different groups in society. And who can argue with any of that? Affinity does terrific work, and I recommend their events to you. They're absolutely inspiring. And they have, just to underline what I've said and prove it even more graphically, put together a short video, which I invite you to have a look at now.
Pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
To ensure young people are given tangible opportunities to contribute to important conversations happening in society.
Over our history, we've had many Aboriginal graduates. This year we're just about to celebrate our 100th.
Since getting to this role in the Human Rights Commission is to look at human rights as an important glue that brings communities together.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
And in that multi-power system, big powers are vying for more power.
As a result, I'm keenly interested in religious liberty, interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and law and religion. So I feel a great sense of affinity with Affinity.
Flying with two wings is the core of the spirituality that Fethullah Gulen brought as he continued to mature and develop as well.
And record numbers of journalists throughout the world being imprisoned, killed and taken hostage.
But we've never really defined at a uni level what a journalist is.
But where journalism differs from most other professions is, not all, but most, is this other notion of serving the public.
What I really believe we're teaching our students are the qualities that they need for leadership in their community, in future professions and in business. Skills for life.
Law schools are now much more than places to train practitioners to write wills for local law officers. They're broad educational institutions to train lawyers to do all aspects of work right up till the middle of this century and beyond.
It's a privilege for me to help facilitate today's discussion. Fake news, propaganda and politics. They all seem to be jumbled together these days, and we don't know what is right and what is wrong. And the problem is that the people perpetrating it don't want us to.
And so you can't understand equality unless you know what it looks like. And you can't know what it looks like if you're not in dialogue, if you're not talking about it.
That inclusivity means a thriving and prosperous society.
Morrison, our Prime Minister, is meeting with Trump in the margins of the G20 in Osaka next Saturday.
For Australians to respect each other's faith requires knowledge, education, dialogue, and a real commitment to real religious freedom. This is the sort of work that Affinity is committed to.
And I'm speaking here not in terms of religion. I'm talking of those things that deeply motivate individuals and cause them to want to emulate the person that they have been listening to.
Deep peace being trust at its most basic. People learn to trust aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, right? And to recognize the commonalities in the human community.
The harm on the environment is at an alarming rate. And we've just seen the bushfires, and a lot of people have been linking that to climate change.
People working together has people feeling, you just draw hope from it.
You can reach a bigger audience through a metaphor, which is this tiny little poem of documentary, than I did with the feature film.
An area always was, always will be Indigenous land, but it's an area that always has been an area of great learning and education.
I truly believe that both seek a strong bottom line and hope to contribute to the well-being of society by aiming to solve three major social problems: disunity, poverty, and ignorance.
So now it falls to me to introduce somebody who, for me, doesn't need much introduction. Richard was, like me, an Australian diplomat in his working life, and together we went to Japan, Burma, Iran, Philippines, and then we went in different directions when he became ambassador to Vietnam, to South Korea, and later to Mexico, the Central American republics, and Cuba, while I was working at the UN and in various other places. And when he left diplomacy in 1997, he became an adjunct professor in media studies at the University of Canberra, and then a similar position at University of Sydney, where he spent a lot of his time setting up a program to send young Australian media students to work in the newsrooms of Asian newspapers, which he thought was a really good formative experience for a young professional journalist in Australia, and so it has proved to be. As well as that, since he retired, Richard's been writing books. He's done 5 with another one on the way, and he's done 5 and a 6th on the way, and the forthcoming one is coming out in June in Melbourne, and it's about somebody who may be familiar, a name who may be familiar to some of you of a certain age, Mr. Edward Cole, who wrote Cole's Funny Picture Books. And this is going to be a big Melbourne event in June. Richard was given an AO by the Governor-General this last year, and so he's AO, and that was for his services to trade, culture and diplomacy. Welcome, Richard.